Thanks for joining us on the program Beyond 100 Days. I am Precious Amayu. You can join the conversation on X, formerly Twitter, using hashtag Beyond 100 Days and TVC News NG. It has been a really busy day for justices of the Supreme Court, who today upheld the election of Abba Yusuf as governor of Kano State. The Apex Court reversed the decisions of the Court of Appeal and the Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal, which sacked the governor. Now, other governors who also had their elections upheld by the Supreme Court are Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos, Bala Mohammed of Bauchi, Francis Owunfuru of Ebonyi, and Caleb Budfwang of Plateau State, Dauda Lawal of Zamfara, Alex Oti of Abia State, and Basi Otu of Cross River State. There is an information of elections that brought in the 8 governors, and we have details in this report.
This was the situation on the street of Kano immediately after the Supreme Court judgment in Abuja. Earlier, Justice John Okoro, who read the lead judgment, said the Court of Appeal was wrong in affirming the decision of the tribunal, which held that Mr. Yusuf did not win the majority of the lawful votes cast in the governorship election on the 18th of March 2023. In the judgment, Justice Okoro held that the tribunal was wrong in deducting 165,616 votes accrued to Mr. Yusuf in the election on the grounds that the ballot papers were not signed and stamped by officials of INEC. Also, the Supreme Court affirmed Babajide Sanwo-Olu's election as governor of Lagos State. The court dismissed the appeal of Gbadebo Road's rival of the Labour Party against the election of Governor Sanwo-Olu. The Apex Court also affirmed the judgment of the Court of Appeal Lagos, dismissing the appeal for lacking in merit. Shortly after the judgment, this is what the former governor of Lagos State had to say.
When you have concurrent findings at the trial and appellate court, it's a rarity for the Supreme Court to depart from those conclusions. So, congratulations to our governor, congratulations to our party and to our government. And so, there will be no more distractions to governance now running at full pace.
Bala Mohammed of the People's Democratic Party has been affirmed as the governor of Bauchi State. The Apex Court affirmed the decision of the Court of Appeal and dismissed the appeal by Sadiq Abubakar of the All Progressives Congress for lacking in merit. The election of Francis Owunfuru of the All Progressives Congress as governor of Ebonyi State has been affirmed by the Supreme Court. The Apex Court affirmed the decision of the Court of Appeal Lagos, dismissing the appeal of Chukwuba Odi of the People's Democratic Party for lacking in merit.
And thank my legal team and the All Progressive Congress and the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Especially, let me thank the courts.
On the appeal by the governor of Plateau State, the Supreme Court reversed the sack of Caleb Budfwang, affirming him as governor. Just few minutes after the judgment, the street of Jos became lively again as residents jubilated freely, awaiting the return of the governor from Abuja. But this is what the governor said shortly after the judgment.
I want to thank their lordships who have today restored confidence in the judiciary. Their lordships have demonstrated courage and they have raised the hope of the ordinary man in Nigeria that justice is still available in Nigeria.
The Supreme Court also affirmed the election of Dauda Lawal of the People's Democratic Party as Zamfara governor. The Apex Court set aside the decision of the Court of Appeal Abuja, which declared the governorship election in Zamfara State as inconclusive and ordered a rerun in 3 local government areas of the state.
Zamfara people are happy and we're grateful. We will now go back, settle down and do the needful in terms of governance.
With the judgment delivered today, It is believed that the governors will now focus on development and delivering good leadership in their respective states.
Now, for more on this development, the National Secretary of the New Nigeria People's Party, Dikbo Layoko, and the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Felix Imoka, joins me on the program. Good to have both of you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers.
All right, let me begin with you, Mr. Layoko. How is your party reacting to this? It was almost looking like you were on the edge as to whether this was going to be a victory or a defeat for your party today at the Supreme Court. What's your reaction to this particular victory of your party?
Yeah, we are very happy, and then expectedly anyway. But we saw it coming. How do I mean? Because the issues at stake are purely legal matters. And to some extent, the Supreme Court had at various times advocated on these matters, and they are settled matters. For example, on the issue of membership of a political party, it's an established fact that nobody from outside the party can question the membership of a candidate. Supreme Court ruled in favor of even the current president. They ruled in favor of the Labour Party candidate in the last presidential election. So we never expected that Supreme Court will one day contradict itself. So we expected that the Supreme Court already having set the template, because this thing is purely, according to the law, it's a purely pre-election matter. And then on the issue of the ballot box papers that were not stamped, Section 63, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act is very clear. It is written in English language, not in Latin, that where a returning officer is convinced that the unsigned or unstamped or ballot paper is from the booklet given to him by INEC, that he shall count and record in favor of the candidate. These are two issues already settled by Supreme Court. So we thank the Supreme Court for restoring the people's hope in the judiciary. We believe that there were some mistakes at the level of the tribunal and then at the level of the appeal court. But like we said earlier, we are very happy. We welcome the decision of the Supreme Court. I think they could also serve as a lesson to the lower courts to always adhere strictly to the laws, setting them up and guiding the elections in Nigeria. I think that is just what we have to say as our opening salvo.
All right, let me bring in Mr. Felix Imoka. It almost seems as though your party was going to coast to victory in Kano State with a judgment from the tribunal and the appeal court. But when you listen to Mr. Layoko there, he said this is a lesson for the lower court, almost as though the lower courts erred in their judgment. What's your reaction, Mr. Felix Imoka, to the Kano judgment? Mr. Felix Imoka, unmute yourself.
We have received the verdict of the Supreme Court in Kano, and for that matter, the other states that were rendered today. The Supreme Court is the final court of the land. Now, whatever may have transpired between the tribunal and the Court of Appeal has been finally rested by the Supreme Court. So we accept that verdict with equanimity. I'm a lawyer, so I would say nothing about the terms. I haven't read the judgment. The judgment is just coming up. So we will take our time to review it, and if there are lessons to learn from that decision, we will learn that lesson. But having said that, I want to just quickly add that now today's judgment, I think, flies in the face of all of the very irresponsible comments and analysis and vilification of the judicial system that we have witnessed during this entire electoral cycle. Now, it was said by major opposition political parties and their leaders that the APC had, in fact, compromised the courts. But now, today's decisions from the Supreme Court, I think it's clear that our courts remain emphatically independent, exercising their constitutional authority to decide cases. Now, look at the cases of Kano Plateau, and Zamfara came down against the APC. Now, if the APC, as was very irresponsibly suggested and argued by the opposition, had the court system in its palm, how do you explain the outcome today? We have gone to court. We went to court like everybody else. We made our cases. Courts gave decisions. And there's a reason in a democracy, in a constitutional order, that you have these three levels of court. The first level, the intermediate level of the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. That is done for a purpose, for a reason, so that whatever errors, if there are errors by one level of court, can be corrected by the next level of court until you reach the third level, the final court. And that's what we got today. So I think we all have a lesson to learn, even without reading the judgments, from just the process itself. That when cases are against you, don't necessarily call for the destruction of the courts because you lost. Because now I am actually on standby, waiting to see the PDP speak and celebrate today's outcome in the states where they won. I want to see them celebrate and say that today, is a victory for democracy. And I will ask, what democracy? The one you said was dead when you lost in the lower courts? I am waiting, like other Nigerians, I'm sure, are waiting.
But let me stay with you, Mr. Moka. Were you surprised by any of these judgments, especially for the states that you mentioned, Zamfara, Plateau, and Kano? Because it almost looks as though, the APC had another opportunity to grab those states, but that was today thwarted by the Supreme Court. So were you surprised by these judgments or any of these judgments?
It's not about surprise. Look, I'm a senior lawyer. When you go to court, until the matter is settled by the courts, you can just hope that your victory is maintained. Law is law, and the courts have the authority to adjudicate, to interpret the law, and to apply the law. So, others can talk about, being surprised. I am not surprised. I'm not surprised because I'm a lawyer, because, in my mind, my frame of mind, I expect anything to happen when you go to court. You win, you lose. You lose, you win. Until you win finally, like today's decisions are done. My training requires that I stand and hold my breath and hope for the best. But today, the Supreme Court has spoken. It is the final court of the land. And like we have consistently maintained at the APC, we accept the decision of our courts. We will not speculate as to why it came down against us or why it was in favor of the other parties. All that matters is that the Supreme Court has spoken, and we welcome the decisions today.
All right, so I want to go to Mr. Layoko and let him respond to a statement Mr. Moka made about, the opposition vilifying the judiciary when they lose, and, and then celebrating judiciary when they win, because that's been something we have seen over the years. And then, but you just said some minutes ago that you expected this, and that, the lower courts should learn from the Supreme Court. It does seem as though, again, that cycle, we're seeing that cycle. I want to respond to that statement.
Yeah, thank you very much, once again. You know one thing, because the laws of the land are written in English language. And then the question you ask yourself is, the Supreme Court, the Appeal Court, the Tribunal, are they not interpreting the same law? And that is why I gave you the clear example of Section 63, Subsection 2. They are guiding the issue of ballot papers, whether stamped or unstamped. And when this matter came up at the tribunal, the lawyers of the NNPP were not even given opportunity to even address this issue. And there's a law guiding that. And you all know, as a Nigerian, as a media person, you know the controversy of the Appeal Court judgment. When they wrote everything, and then in the concluding part of the judgment, they said, we have awarded costs against APC. We have nullified the election of the tribunal. And the same court earlier, a week earlier, had said that, they had given the victory to APC. So when you have such a situation, my dear sister, in the judiciary, it will be very, very difficult for any opposition or anybody that has matters in court to now say, I'm going to accept this judgment. Whatever animosity that, so to speak, or misgiving that Nigerians have against some judgments, it has to do with the people around that judgment. That's why I gave you the example of the Appeal Court in our own case. On Friday, November 7th, earlier, they said we have lost. They gave it to APC. All of a sudden, when we requested for the CTC, the concluding part of the CTC awarded victory to us. So I think there's a need for the judiciary to watch its hand clean some of the time. That is why what happened to the Supreme Court, if you listen to some of our utterances, our press releases, our press conference, we never vilified the entire judiciary. We continue, we kept on saying we have hope in the judiciary, and we believe that the Supreme Court will correct the errors, because we knew that there were a lot of errors in that judgment. That's why I gave you the example of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has rightly interpreted the law, written in English language, in the case of membership of a political party, in the case of ballot papers that were not signed. That was the two area or plank on which the APC hung their matter to the tribunal, and which the tribunal and then the appeal court to some extent, I agree with them. But the Supreme Court now interpreting the law said no. The appeal court was wrong, because the law of ballot paper or signed has been settled by Section 63, Subsection 2 of the Federal Act. It is written in English language. Are you telling me that the Supreme Court judges or justices, they understand English more than the other people at the level of the court? That's why I said the courts need to be very careful. Let them always interpret the law as it is written in the books. It is no problem with that. No opposition will unnecessarily vilify or criticize judiciary or judgment. Let the judgment be seen. They always say in that judiciary stuff, let justice be seen to have been done. As simple as ABC. Like I said, APC, the Supreme Court made it very clear. On the issue of ballot paper unsigned, Section 63, Subsection 2 took care of that. On the issue of membership of the party, they even said APC shouldn't have gone to court in the first instance. But like my dear brother said, he has not read the judgment. Maybe when he reads the judgment, he will understand what he's trying to say. But like we say, there is need for us to defend the institutions of government. Let the sort of government also defend itself. Nobody will unnecessarily vilify any judiciary or any judicial officer or any level of judiciary. The law is there for them to interpret, and they are written in English language. Nobody has anything against judiciary. The question you ask yourself is, how come that, as of today, all the ones that the tribunal, the Court of Appeal have nullified have been reinstated by Supreme Court? Are they not interpreting the same law? That is the question that I should be asking the lower courts.
All right, Mr. Layoka, let me quickly come in here because of time. You were just talking about those who vilify the judiciary. There are comments now on social media by those who do not support this particular judgment in Kano State, saying that, look, it will seem as though the judges gave this judgment for public peace in Kano, out of fear of what may happen if it has gone the other way. How do you respond to this?
Well, they have to go and look at the law. If the judgment of today contravenes the law or contradicts the law, then that is when they are saying that the judgment is for peace. The Supreme Court justices made it very clear why they have arrived at that conclusion. They cited the law. The laws are there. But anyway, everybody wants peace in this country. We don't want anything that will truncate the relative peace we have. So I think that should be the focus of everybody. That is, our concern is justice has been served, and it has been seen to have been served. That is just this. Anybody who have issues, I'm very happy my dear brother said APC has accepted the judgment. Then who will now be crying more than the bereaved? So I think we all want peace, and that should be the desire of every political party. Because especially it's even good APC is in power now. They desire peace. Because it is only atmosphere of peace that they can endanger the development in the country.
All right, so let me again bring in Mr. Moka. I want to take a statement from Justice Okoro, where he said that he talked about the requirement that it must be proven that a ballot paper was not the ones deployed for the conduct of the election. Almost as it sounds like an indictment, almost like saying your party did not do its homework in proving that particular case.
I don't think the Supreme Court touched on the substance of the arguments or the facts as laid before the tribunal. Now, the question is, why did it become necessary for INEC to authenticate these ballots? Why is that? I mean, when there's, an official act or a procedure or a guideline about how things are to be done, there's a reason for that. There's a purpose. as a mischief that it seeks to prevent. Now, authenticating ballots was meant to ensure that all of the ballots that are cast in any election are ballots that were, validly and properly, accredited or released for that election, so that people don't go elsewhere and print ballots or bring ballots from elsewhere to cast in an election. That's replete in our history. We've seen our election cycles where people snatch ballot boxes or they stuff ballot boxes. This was a method that INEC introduced to try to ensure that ballots that are cast can be verified to be the legal ballots. Look, that is a factual issue. I'm not going to dwell on that. But I want to respond to something my brother said when he was speaking. When he was talking about the law is clear and that it is surprising, or asking whether it's not surprising that the Supreme Court, who also are reading these laws in English, we come to a different verdict. No, look, that is not the point. Because the Supreme Court is a creation of the Constitution. The same Constitution created the Court of Appeal and created the High Courts. There is a reason for that. Even though all of the laws are written in English, even though all of these judges are lawyers who were trained and went to law school and were called to the bar and now are judges, even though, despite all of that, there's a reason you have this hierarchy of courts. Because even though you and I may speak English, we may read the same sentence and understand differently. That is normal. It's not anything that calls into question the intelligence or the commitment or the professionalism of the lower court judges into any kind of question. So I don't think that's an appropriate comment to make. What matters today is that whatever the High Court said, whatever the Court of Appeal said, the Supreme Court, by the hierarchy of our courts, has laid all of these controversies to rest. And I think that's the point I'm making. So I don't want to go into any micro-analysis of what was right or wrong. Judges at the High Court, they gave judgment as they understood it. Appeal Court, the same thing, gave the judgment as they understood it. The Supreme Court has also given its judgment as they understand it. Now, let me say this. There will be a lot of lawyers who will disagree, even with the Supreme Court, who will make sensible, smart arguments to say that the Supreme Court may have erred on one point or the other. But what is important is that the finality of the Supreme Court makes their judgment infallible. So whatever anybody may think, you can't review it. It's no longer liable to review. And that is where it rests. And I think that's the premise on which we at the APC have come to terms with the judgment today, because it is final in all respects.
All right, finally, let me go to Dikbo Layoko. Your party is now the governing party in Kano State. What's next for governance in Kano?
Yeah, it should be more, the governor will be more focused. He was never distracted, because if you look at his activities, even while this matter was pending at the tribunal, at the appeal court, and then up to Supreme Court, he was never distracted. He was discharging the duties of the state and when due. Because we knew right from the beginning that, and just like the Supreme Court said today, that there was no any merit in that case right from the beginning. So the governor was never distracted, but as a human being, once in a while, he will have to be looking back at what was happening at the tribunal, at the Court of Appeal, and then the Supreme Court. So I think now he will be more focused, so to speak. And then if you look at it, what he has been doing since May 29 when he took over, it's as if this man has been there for the past 3-4 years. What he has been able to achieve within just 8 months. I think it's just more work for him, more dedication, and then because the love the people of Kano has always shown to him, that he had to reciprocate and then to assure them and then to convince them that actually the choice they made on the 18th of March by voting for him massively, overwhelmingly, the only governor that has over that has over 1 million votes to elect him into office. I think he needs to reciprocate this good gesture by offering dividend of democracy to speak.
We'll see how far that popularity goes in coming years. We also know that lawyers and analysts will continue to look at all of these judgments even in the coming days. Thanks to both of you. The National Secretary of the New Nigeria People's Party, Dikbo Layoko, and the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Felix Moka. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you very much. God bless you.